Welcome to the Contagious Code podcast, where we dive deep into code, learn practical skills, celebrate the beauty of engineering, and eliminate imposter syndrome. I'm Tejas Kumar, and I've been building on the web for over 20 years at places like Vercel, Spotify, Zeta, and more. Today, my guest is Pierre Richelsen, the chairman and co-founder of Cal.com. Cal.com gives scheduling infrastructure to the entire world, literally from nursing to healthcare to food and beverage to any industry in the world. Cal.com helps people schedule meetings and make work happen. Cal.com is fully open source and is advertised as the open source Calendly alternative. Not only is Cal.com open source, but it's also an open startup, meaning everything about it is transparent, including the number of active users weekly and monthly, the recurring revenue annually, even the salaries of employees is fully open source, provided employees consent to it. It is a fully, truly open startup. In our discussion today, we dive into all of those. We dive into what it takes to actually build an open source Calendly or scheduling tool. We dive into the technical details of how it's built using serverless and Next.js. We also dive into what it takes to actually build a fully transparent and open startup and why they do that. What values do they have? It is indeed a very deep dive. We also talk about a controversial topic that Cal.com uses, which is no location-based pay. So they pay engineers what engineers are worth for the work that they do, irrespective of location. And usually this is somewhere around the average between London and New York salaries, meaning people living in India or Indonesia or Japan or the United States or San Francisco, no matter where they live, they all earn an amount of money that is comparable and really compensatory for the work, while also not being unbalanced. Everybody earns the same salary bands. We have a deep dive discussion about that, the ethics of it, the fairness of it, the balance of it, and more. If you're interested in what it takes to build software like Calendly or an open source scheduling tool, or if you're interested in what it takes to run a company in a fully, truly open and balanced way, then this episode is for you. Now, I'd like to offer this to all of you at no cost because this is very much separate to my day job. And the way we can do that is through sponsors and partners. Let's take a moment to acknowledge them. The Contagious Code podcast is sponsored by Code Crafters. Code Crafters is a tool that teaches you how to level up your coding skills just like I do. They have you pick a programming language like Python or JavaScript, and then a tool that developers use like Redis or Docker. And then they have you rebuild that tool from scratch in the language you chose. By doing this, you get better at the language, but you also get better at the tool by literally building it from scratch in a guided way. The Contagious Code podcast is also partnered with React Africa and React Brussels. These are two upcoming conferences organized by the same team. That's the Belgium JavaScript community. And we're giving away one free ticket per conference. If you'd like to win a free ticket, share this episode on social media. Mention you'd like to win the free ticket to either React Africa in Casablanca, Morocco, or React Brussels in Belgium, and we'll give you that, or rather you'll enter a raffle to win that. Finally, the Contagious Code podcast is giving away one free edition of Kent C. Dodds' Epic Web version 2 course, Epic React version 2, excuse me. If you'd like to win that, here's how you can do that. Share this episode on social media and share the timestamp of the part that stuck out to you the most in our discussion. It can be anything, but what you need to do is share on social media the link to the episode and the moment that you enjoyed, and you will enter a raffle to win a copy of Kent C. Dodds' Epic React V2 course. Hey, thanks so much for sticking around. And now for my discussion with Pierre Richelsen. Pierre Richelsen, I'm so excited to talk to you about Cal.com today.
Hey, Tias. Nice to meet you.
Thanks. So first question, really important, the most important question. Do we still hate Supabase, aka Super Ass?
Yeah, we've come to terms. We've launched our own starter kit with them. So, I'd say full context is we never really hated each other. It's more like, haha, you got pranked. No, I mean Paul is a great investor in Cal. We've been in a group chat for like forever, and so it's just been fun to see all of the memes and all of that stuff. So
yeah. I will say this: I think Cal.com and Supabase have the best, most meme friendly, fun social media presences. I think that's really cool, and I'd love to talk more about the details of that from like an actual strategic business marketing standpoint a bit later. But okay, for those who maybe haven't heard of you and Cal.com, would you be willing to do a little bit of an introduction? Specifically, what is Cal.com and why do you start it?
for sure, yeah. Cal.com is open source scheduling infrastructure, which means we provide not only consumers with a free and open source scheduling tool, such as scheduling this podcast, but also we provide the infrastructure for larger corporations to whether they want to build a platform where, let's say, users meet users, like a patient meets doctors, or just large teams, like sales teams of 500 plus people meeting prospects. So we really try to be somewhat industry agnostic and just build the best scheduling. But that means we have, all kinds of different customers, from healthcare to yoga teachers to business coaches, podcasters, like all across the industries, really.
And you said this is open source. And I think it's really cool because it's open source and pluggable. Would you agree that it's pluggable in nature makes it so versatile across different industries?
For sure, yeah. Well, I mean, the common complaint with any SaaS business is maybe you find a tool that does, let's say, 80% of what you're trying to achieve, but then the last 20% you can't really change. Sure, some companies have like APIs and open APIs, and you can like build your own, workarounds, but that's really it. And beyond that, you really like hoping to get in touch with one of those engineers at that company and try to like pressure them into shipping this tiny little feature or integration. And um it's really really hard. And so whether you think about different video conferencing tools or different calendars or certain features, like I want this setting to mark me out of office when X happens or something, right? Like all these different things, and time is so complex and unique for everyone. um if our team had to ship everything, every feature request, every idea, um we just couldn't, right? And so by being open source, not only feature requests, right, but like everything, every time a customer has an issue, they have the choice between reporting it to us, reporting it on GitHub, and then maybe they fix it themselves, or someone else from the community jumps in, makes a 2 line of code change, and there you go, right? Um, I think whenever you want something that's highly customizable and modular and extendable, it really has to be open source.
Yeah, and I think it's so cool because it also has the avenue to drive more traditional businesses that maybe don't know what open source is into open source. By they probably like there's some hospital using Cal.com and they're like, I wish we had this feature, and then their internal teams might be able to introduce them to wait, we
Yeah,
could just build it.
yeah.
Um,
We have a lot
Incredible.
of, I'd say the largest customers are self-hosting nowadays. And so this happens on a daily basis, right? They get the core, right? They get the code base and it works. And then their product manager PM says like, how cool would it be to do X? And then the engineer says, wow, cool, let's do that, right? That is just impossible with using any, SaaS business, really. Not only the customization, but also, like the privacy. You want the hospital to be in charge of their data. You don't want to rely on someone else's uptime. What if their server goes down and, all that stuff? I think there are just um, a lot of similar reasons for larger companies to use open source software. Um, and it's great to see that this has been working out for us.
But this can only be successful if Cal.com, the company, spends time maintaining the open source project. That is issues and pull requests and being a part of the discussion, and maybe there's a Discord.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you've got to like ship features. And indeed, your team ships, man. I've seen the AI assistant feature for scheduling and so on.
Yeah.
How do you balance that? Because if you relax too much on responding to people on GitHub, they probably lose interest and they'll maybe the worst case they'll probably fork it and then build their own thing, and now you've got this Frankenstein situation, right?
Mm. Yeah, I am, when it comes to product, I'm very obsessed. Like I probably only do product in the team. Like, sorry, like I'm not the only one in product, but like my day-to-day job is really just product. I do product and sales, and that goes hand in hand because, sales is really just listening to customers and trying to help them succeed. So yeah, I'm really obsessed about product, and like I use Calicom every day, as a customer, as a guest of other people. And so I read every issue, and there's 600 or something. We've closed, I don't know how many, like I think there's over 5,000 GitHub tickets. I mean, we can look into this. So there's over 5,640 closed tickets, and there's a high chance that
Wow.
I've probably read every second of them. I didn't reply to every second because like a lot of them are sometimes not even worth replying to because it's obvious and you close it with a comment or something. But um, I think being aware, what the community reports, like when you always need to remember that like when someone makes an issue or reports something, it means there's a chance that like maybe 10 times or 100 times more people experiencing this, right? Because most people don't report stuff. They use a product, throws an error, you remove the app from your phone or you close the tab. That's the average case. Like people don't typically report unless they really like your product. So by people having opening issues, it's A, they love your product and they want to make it better, and B, there's probably something going on, right? So I think first step is always to see like what's the priority of that thing. Is it like gonna take down everyone's experience, or is it just like a nice to have thing? Um, we we really just aggressively prioritize of like low, medium, and high, and then there's like urgent, which has to be resolved within like 12 hours or something. Um, and and then for like for quick fixes and low priority, we've started to give it a community label, which means like there's a bounty most of the time attached to it, and also that label says our core team will not work on it. So like if you're a contributor, if you're a community member, and you want to make sure that there's not going to be like a team member hijacking your work, like because he's faster or they have more context, and it's kind of like this safe bubble of like, okay, I can look at this and I can take my time. It's not really urgent, it's not critical, it's not mission critical. So that's been working out great. And then bounties are great to just it's more of a signaling thing. It's not like a um, we pay you to do something. It's more like a lot of times also people put their own kind of like, hey, I would pay money if this gets merged, right? And then we assign a bounty to it so people have like a signal, okay, oh wow, this is actually more important than other things, right? Um, but there are also bounties for low priority tickets just because it's sometimes nice to just do a $20 cleanup. Like maybe there's an issue that's just cleaning up or refactoring as like a busy work, right? And you don't want to have your engineers get distracted by like pulling them out of an existing project and then having them some bit do busy work. So every now and then, like these low hanging fruit tickets with a bounty are great because like maybe a community member spends 30 minutes on it and makes $20. Um, and not only that, but then they go through the repo, they learn, they see how everything works, and they have like they build more touch points with the code base, and they learn and they try things. I think it's a really really cool way to work with the community.
Yeah, totally. You said something so profound. You said people typically don't complain or open issues when they experience difficulty with the application. So this multiplier of at least probably 10 times the people are experiencing this is so profound. I think listeners should really hear that and value that. So yesterday, literally yesterday, I helped a gamer. This person is a professional, like wants to be a professional gamer. He's a Fortnite coach. I helped him set up his Cal.com account because he wants to do paid coaching, and your
Yeah,
Stripe integration is fantastic, right? So I said, okay, let's go set up Stripe, let's go set up Cal.com, and the we ran into a limitation, and indeed, I didn't open an issue yet. I plan to, but for example, the name field is mandatory, right? And so in
mm,
the gamer culture, you typically want to hide your name, and instead you hide behind
right.
like a Discord handle and stuff. But totally, like to your point, I didn't open an issue. We both just looked at it and went like, yeah, sucks that this is required, but whatever, we'll work around it. And so it's so true. People tend not to do that. And so there's a sense of urgency there. Now,
Yeah,
how does that play into prioritization? Because you mentioned there's these levels. Obviously, there's busy work, which is low. There's a medium level of priority, which is maybe a new feature, but if it doesn't land, it's okay. And there's a high priority, which is probably a bug. Something's
right,
broken.
right.
What is, like, as it stands, the most common priority? I would hope it's not the urgent one.
It's not the urgent one. No, that would be not so good. To your point, by the way, you can rename each input. So even if it's mandatory, you can rename your name to gamertag if you want to. So
Oh, cool. Well, there you go.
in the
See, that's
settings,
why we didn't open the issue.
that should work, I guess. Um, I'd say so. I've had this thought like a week ago of like I think high priority and I'd say like higher medium priority. Well, medium priority helps you find product market fit because that's really like you should spend your time that's like trivial on the most important things, right? Um, but the low priority tickets, um, they almost keep you product market fit and they make you loved by people, right? Because if you think of a traditional low priority ticket is like add 5 pixels of more border radius. It's not going to get you to product market fit, right? But if you have 100,000 people and they look at a button and the button has a different, we've all seen these tweets on Twitter, right? Where the
Yeah.
inner border radius is different than the outer border radius, and it just looks like I want to fix this
Yeah.
border radius.
Yeah. I want to join the company, get hired for 1 day, fix it, and leave. That's what
Yeah,
people say.
because maybe it's the most important button and it just looks off, right? But the button works and no one ever reports it and it's a low priority and it gets sinking down in the stack. But maybe that's even not low priority anymore. So, you know, would I take an engineer out of their project to have them fix a border radius? No, right? You wouldn't. But if you put a $20 or $40 bounty on a low priority ticket, that's a quick win and doesn't even need reviews because you only change a CSS variable or some other stuff in a couple components. Um, Now suddenly that makes the product really polished because those are the things why people come back to and why they tweet about it and why they feel like comfortable, like polished, right? And so I think the 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 difference between low priority and polish is very interesting because you don't want to technically you don't want to start polishing buttons before you have product market fit. Like things have to work, right? But in order to keep product market fit and retain customers and delight them and really like cross the chasm, from like early adopters to mainstream adoption, um, I wouldn't I wouldn't throw away low priority tickets because otherwise you could just close them and say, sorry, no low priority, let's close them. I'm never going to fix the border radius, right? But so I think that's a
Yeah.
that's a good mental model.
That's so great. I love this. Low priority tickets help you keep product market fit, and
Yeah,
the high priority ones let you get it. That's really really cool. And indeed, I've seen so many. I've worked at startups where we just don't care about those details because we're pre PMF. Has
yeah,
Cal.com found product market fit? So in our discussion with Brandon Bayer, the CEO of Flight Control, he mentioned that there's levels to product market fit, right? You in the beginning, yes, we have some use cases, we maybe have some paying customers, but what you're chasing is typically this like instead of pushing the boulder up the hill, you're trying to like run and catch up to it because it's like going way ahead of you because people need your thing and they would be really frustrated if it didn't exist. Now, I would be pretty frustrated if Cal.com didn't exist because I'd have to use Calendly, which I'll say it. I'm not ashamed. It's an inferior product.
yeah.
And so for me, I would be pretty upset if it didn't fit. Does this mean you have the level of PMF or product market fit that you want?
We've done the famous like PMF survey once with Formbricks. They have this as like a template. Um, and I think I don't remember. I can actually look into the data. Let me see if I can find it. Um, I remember that the results were actually surprising me how desperate people would be if we would cease to exist. And I know there are alternatives. We came up as an alternative, but at a certain point, you just exceed product and features and expectations. So it's like um, I think there's a lot of things we do that others don't, and people would be really, really disappointed. Yeah, I got the results here. So, how disappointed would you be if Calicom no longer exists? This is 2,000 responses. 59% would say very disappointed, which is a great indicator. And then 30% would say somewhat disappointed, 10% would say not disappointed at all. So that's like, if you compare the benchmarks, let me open up the benchmarks.
That
Uh,
is so cool.
PMS survey benchmarks.
I love that we're just
This
looking
has
this up
like
on the fly.
um, scores exceeding 40% indicate good product market fit. So this has been, what is it, 20? 30 plus, this is 80%. So twice from like 40 is like you have product market fit somewhat. This one's scoring like over 80. So only
Incredible.
10% of people say they would not be disappointed at all. That's crazy to me. And I never knew that. And so shout out to Phonebreaks for having that survey. But um, we haven't run this survey again because, like, what do you learn from it? You're like, okay, now I know.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing in open source specifically is you have different levels of product market fit. You have like, um, sure, you have product and the market, but you also have like community and open source adoption and also the financial aspect. Like a lot of open source projects have this type of data that say I would be depressed if, like, here's the thing, I would be very sad if React tomorrow ceases to work. Not that it ceases to exist because it's open source, it always exists, but like if for whatever reason somehow React doesn't work tomorrow, I would be very disappointed. Now, is it a good business model? Does it make a lot of money? Not really. It is still a small team from Facebook and they probably have this like open source budget, but it's not like it's bringing in making money. It's saving Facebook money because they have an easier hiring funnel and they have a better infrastructure. But like, is it a money making business? Definitely not. So I think there are different levels to product market fit. There's like this community market fit where people are loving a product and they contribute and they would die to be on the core team. But then there's also products, and we see many open source projects who never end up monetizing and die. And so I'd say the traditional product market fit sense for SaaS businesses like make $1 million first before you say you have product market fit and grow at like 70, 80, or 60 to 80% quarter over quarter in revenue. Um, that's a different product market fit than just having a bunch of community members who would be very sad about your product, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
Is that are those numbers somewhere indicative of Cal.com's quarter on quarter
yeah,
growth?
yeah,
So I wanted to ask you about this. Like Cal.com is probably the most transparent company I've seen that is for profit. Like everyone's salary is just open source. You literally just go Google it now and you can see even your
yeah.
salary, which I think is again very much on brand for you, Pierre, as a like meme loving CEO. But I think that's cool. Where does that come from? And can we maybe talk about the recurring revenue and such?
For sure, yeah. Well, first things first. When you're already open, like open source, a lot of people say like, oh, how crazy that you publish your code, like, and then you realize, okay, code is like
Right.
actually not that important. I mean, sure, it's good, but people end up buying products not for the code, but for what problem they solve. So, being open source already, you basically open up the Pandora's box and show what's inside. Um, and then open startup goes back many years. Not even in the open source. It's kind of counterintuitive, but like we might be the first like larger open source company that also has an open startup page. Because typically it's like more in the indie and bootstrapping community. I remember a lot of bootstrappers actually have removed their pages for all kinds of reasons. Um, I don't know if they bring it back or if that open startup has died for them. Buffer is still one of those who also have public salaries. Um, and then me and Bailey, probably in the first couple of weeks when we really built this company, um, we were like, how do we want to run this? How do we want to build this culture? How do we want to, promote transparency? And frankly, for me, it's I'm really bad at like at lying or hiding like what I think. And so for me to tell some people something and then remembering what I can tell to people and what can I not tell to other people is not very easy, right? So I think if you are someone who's very open and transparent and build in public and you want to, invite community and feedback, it's much easier to just say, okay, everything by default, not everything, but like let's try to get everything possibly public that doesn't harm the business, doesn't harm people. Like we don't publish people's like addresses or living situations, right? And also the salaries are opt-in. So we ask every person who's joining, like, do you want to, be on the page? And if they say no for some reasons, then that's fine, right? Like it's no peer pressure. We really try to be open here. And it turns out like we've gone from day one open to where we are today without any real major drawback. If anything, we've hired more people who share the same energy and values. Um, we have an amazing hiring funnel. When we make a job description, we get like 500 applications. We
Wow.
we also try to not negotiate on salaries. We say like this is it, like take it or leave it, and here's why. Like here's what the team makes, and we can't give you a 300 grand salary because then you would make twice as much money as the highest paying person in the team. And so it removes a lot of questions. It removes a lot of um, discrimination. There virtually is no way for me to give someone a worse salary because you would know, right? So we have these bands. We pay people. Actually, this is another thing that's not only open policy but like global policy. We pay the same engineer IC1 no matter where they live. So if you live in India, you get the same as if you live in Germany or if you live in the UK. This excludes us from markets for sure, because our average salary is, I'd say, between New York and London, right? So if you take New York and London, we take the average. Um, so that excludes people from, let's say, San Francisco or Switzerland or Norway who, well, I mean, they could still live, but it's not, you don't have a fancy salary, right? Um, and that was a really controversial thing. But in my mind, you get paid for your work, right? And that's all that matters. And if you really want to build like a somewhat meritocracy in your business and you don't want to take favors, I don't care where you are right now. I don't even know where you are right now, and you don't know where I am, right? So why would I care? And the same is true for people who might live in a more expensive area, but maybe they live at their parents and they don't pay rent and they don't go out and they eat pasta every day, right? Like, I know there are exceptions. I know there's, let's say, families living in San Francisco who need to make 350 grand to survive on a nice suburb area. But we made the decision to say, is this talent we desperately are chasing right now? Probably not, right? And so by paying way above average, we have some of the most fantastic engineers from India. We have some of the most fantastic engineers from other countries, from Mexico, from where else? From uh, yeah, UK and these like more tier, well, not tier, but like not San Francisco markets, but they are better because now you put out a salary and just the very very fucking best apply, not the average ones, right? Because like if you get an average engineer in the Bay Area, they they cost you the same as the very fucking best in every other market. And so if you run a business and you're already globally remote distributed, there's really no incentive for you to hire these people in crazy expensive areas. It does make sense if you have an office there and you have this in-office culture and you have to bite the bullet. Um, but that's how we landed at the open policy and open global salaries. There's
Yeah.
really no also like sexism because it doesn't matter where you're from, what your color is, what your name is, what it's like just get that salary. That's it.
It's the great equalizer in so many ways. And indeed, like I've worked at some companies where, I was explicitly told we don't hire in India or Africa because we don't get, and this is not my words, we don't get quality talent.
Mm.
But at what price, right? That's the question. Because if you pay equally across geography, then how can you not?
You
Um,
can,
so
yeah,
I like that it leaves it shuts the door in the face of elitism and
yeah,
sexism and racism and like all of it. It's just like, look, man, like you may be a great engineer in San Francisco. We don't care. This is what we can offer. However, I did get in an argument on X, formerly known as Twitter, with somebody who mentioned the valuation across geographies, right? Because like a coffee in Berlin will cost you €4, and the same coffee, literally the same Starbucks coffee in Doha, Qatar, will cost you like 25 cents, maybe 50 cents in euro cents. So it's the same thing. It's going to give you the same caffeine, the same value, but because of quality of life standards across geographies, it's valued differently. It's
yeah.
priced differently. How does that play into this uniform distribution of salaries worldwide?
Yeah. Well, for sure. I'm not saying every company should adopt this because there's also obviously drawbacks. You can't hire an SF, you can't hire in New York, really. Um, we've always looked at like fairness in the company, and um, it's funny how, is it fair for someone to live in a less expensive country or area? Even in the US, you can move, to rural Austin, Texas, and pay a third of what your colleagues make. And I think in the past we've always said like your location is fixed and your salary is variable, right? But like at the same time, you can say the salary is fixed and your location is variable. Like we don't care where you are. You can move tomorrow. If you want to have a better life quality, San Francisco is probably not the place for you. So that's your choice. Not always, of course, there's family and situations, but in the vast majority of cases, and again, tech is also worth reminding a very young industry. Most of people are between 20 and 39, I'd say. I've moved countries 4 or 5 times in my life, not like permanently, but like I've been living for uh, up to 5 months ish in different countries. And like, would I want it to be talking to my manager each time I'm moving and saying like, hey, I need a 30% salary deduction. Now I need a 40% increase. Like you would probably get fired by like that type of behavior. Now we do the opposite. We empower people to change. Like if you want to go from India to Dubai, has happened in our company. Someone moved from India to Dubai. Same thing happened for someone who lived in Hawaii and San Francisco, which are very expensive, and they moved to Manila. No salary change. So these things I want them to happen in the company because I think the fairness should be I get paid the same as my neighbor, as my not my neighbor, my teammate, my team member. If I do good work, I should get paid good work. If I do bad work, I should get paid bad work or get fired. If I do amazing work, I should make more money than before, right?
Right.
That's to me,
Because
it's like an API call, right? Like if you have a better API, I pay more money. If you have a worse API, I pay less money. And so,
yeah,
but now it's like how that person optimizes their own cost is really up to them. They can, bite the bullet. And some people want to pay $5 for a coffee, and they are fine with that. Other people say, "Wow, this area has gotten way too expensive. I need to move back to my, closer to my family or something."
yeah. Or maybe they want to, and they're
Or
not
maybe they
locked
want to.
down by geography. Yeah.
So I think it's a lot better to empower team members to focus on their costs than on squeezing out the last percentages. And here's the thing also, like the people who really live in expensive areas don't apply at Cal because they know it's like probably not the right salary. But also even if you end up matching their salary, they're like one Nvidia coffee meeting away from leaving your company again. So you don't really
Yeah.
build the most loyal team in the first place, even if you pay way above market or market in these highly competitive places, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
I think
That is such a
the
great.
last the last anecdote is we do an annual retreat, right? And so we fly people in from all over the world, literally from Hawaii to Manila, like all of the time zones. And I always thought like, how depressing would it be to not have global salaries? And now half of the team can't afford the travel, and the very few people who afford it arrive in the same hotel lobby or whatever Airbnb, and some people are balling like as a senior engineer, and then the other senior engineer can pay for the dinner table, right? Like how's that fair? Like how do you
Yeah.
talk about how do you sit in the same room and you talk about the same problem that you're facing, and one person throws the dinner bill and pays for the table, and the other person like barely afforded to come here, right? Because you play like the
Yeah.
local senior salary of whatever India or some other region.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's not fair to me either. And I really try to imagine like what is it like to have a uh, geographically uh, split out team, where do you draw the fairness line? Do you draw the fairness line of like, can people afford the same amount of liters of coffee, or do they get paid for the same amount of work?
Yeah, brilliant. I fully am on board with that, and it's something I wish more companies would follow because it places the emphasis and the focus on individuals and their collective team as opposed to this person's going to outperform the other person, so we're going to maybe invest more in them. I love your comment, Pierre, on loyalty because it's so true. I've been in positions where I was paid more than like twice the other engineers, and I did leave quickly because I had the options, and I felt so like I wasn't loyal. I'm ashamed of that, I'll admit. But like when everybody's paid the same, you optimize for loyalty and long tenure. So I still appreciate that. I want to dive into the technical side of Cal.com. Oh my god, what an insult! I want to dive into the technical side of Cal.com a little bit. I'll tell you why I said Calendly. But before that, I had one more question for you. And then I want to do get into the technical side. And the thing is, let's talk about numbers since it is transparent. What is your weekly active users or monthly active users, whatever you want, and the recurring revenue, both monthly and annual?
Yeah, I need to open up Calicom Open.
Oh,
um,
I guess I could also the listeners could like literally just go on the website and see
yeah,
that. Is that
yeah.
true? Oh my goodness,
So
bananas.
we have a monthly active user statistic that means has had at least one booking, which is very different to how most companies track active usage, because you could track like has signed into the product or has had any interaction with the product. Um, we picked monthly active users to be minimum one booking because that's the minimum job we can do to provide value, right? Like if you don't have bookings, sure, you might be on vacation, but like you have value the moment you get one booking from us, right? So that's in June, there was roughly 25,000 people had at least one booking, but that also results in over 277,000 guests, right?
Wow,
So
yeah.
we on average have almost a quarter million bookings per month. So every quarter is about 1 million bookings, which
Bananas.
is just like,
Yeah. Yeah, built on an open source project.
yeah,
Wild. And what about the money? Let's talk ARR.
yeah.
That's probably also on the website.
Yeah, that's something I really want to get on. Like, don't get me wrong, I really want to get this on the open page. I'm really struggling to get data out of Stripe. So right now, I'm literally like copy pasting it to like the investor reports and stuff. I don't know why,
Wow.
and I'm in touch with Stripe, but like I really, and I'm not the only one. I've posted this on Twitter multiple times of like, why is it so hard to get data out of Stripe? I don't understand. And they say,
It's probably
well, we give you the raw data, but you need to calculate your MRR yourself. So not an excuse, but so right now we are on track to probably do 3 million at the end of this quarter in annual revenue.
that's awesome.
Um, and we really started to monetize, I'd say, like if I look at the Stripe graph, because sure we had a pay plan before, and we had um, some a little bit of marketing, but like we really kicked in with like more sales activity, I'd say in December. And so from December to now, we've probably grown by maybe 3 or 4x. So
Wow.
in
Absolutely
six
incredible.
months, yeah.
I celebrate that success. I'm here for it, and I'm happy to contribute to it. What do people pay? Cal.com is open source. You've got 3 million in ARR. What do people pay for?
We have close to 3 million. We have a Teams plan. We have free individual usage is anyone can just use the full product, and then we have a Teams product where multiplayer is paid. You traditional $12 a month or something per person. Then we have organizations, which is really targeted towards people with multiple departments. So you have a sales department, marketing, partnerships, legal, and they all have meetings. Everyone's talking. Most of our job is just talking to people. And so once you have departments, we call this organizations. So you have multiple sub teams, but they're all managed. You can think of this as Google Workspace where you have managed email addresses, and but that also gives you admin access, which means you can like by API be fully in charge of every team member. Because previously, if you're just a team member, you're like individuals like put into a group, and you can be part of multiple teams because you have a single account. Like think of this as Gmail, like your personal private Gmail, and you don't want to give someone else access to your personal private Gmail, right? Whereas if you're inside an organization, now you have full access, admin access, because you own like the company owns that account versus you own your own account right now, right? So that's organizations, and then we have just traditional enterprise, which is anything beyond like customizations, best support, self-hosting, and compliance checks, and the list goes on really. So, and these
I,
are
I love it.
custom prices. Yeah,
That's like the Robin Hood model where individuals get it free and people with money, ideally teams and organizations and enterprise, pay, and they sort of fund the free users in a way that
sure.
that is so cool. It's almost like the healthcare system in Germany. I love it. Hey, this is so great. I wanted to now switch a little bit and talk about the technical side because I so Cal.com started in 2020 or 2021, right?
I'd say 21.
Yes.
Yeah, because
Good.
I didn't touch
Good.
it. Like the repo was opened in maybe October 2020, but I didn't touch it for like 8, 9 months. So
Good, perfect. The reason I ask is because I built like a precursor to Cal.com internally. It was closed source. It was at a company that I was working at. And we had to use a booking tool, a scheduling tool, because it was a people. If I say this, people will start to identify which company it was. But it was a big team of developers that companies wanted to hire, and so they would book events with the developers that they were interested in, and so we needed scheduling was a core part of the business, and the best infrastructure at the time was Calendly. This is why I said Calendly earlier.
right,
And so my CTO came to me and said, "Listen, Calendly is way too expensive. We're losing a bunch of money because we like our team was 400 people, dude. Like the Calendly costs $15 per user per month,
right.
and it was like times 400. It was just an abnormal amount of money. And my CTO was like, "Can we save some costs here?" And I said, I can try and build. I kind of know what it's doing, so I'm going to build our own. Is that okay? Do we have 3 months for it? He said, yeah, sure. And so I started building it and very quickly ran into a ton of complexity. And this is why I'm so happy Cal.com exists and is open source. The biggest problem I had was when you connect with Google, when you like log in with Google and connect your calendar, Google sends you like every event, and if it's a recurring event, they send it to you all the way through to like 2099, I think. And so I wasn't ready for this like massive water hose or fire hose of events. Is that relatable one? And how what does the internal infrastructure of or architecture of Cal.com look like to account for this and other complexities?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I just literally wrote a blog post of like why you should not build your own scheduling in-house. Like, please use any product, but not your own. Like, just save yourself the pain. Um, I'd say the calendar stuff sure is a relevant one, but there's so many issues with time zones and detecting like blocked logic, like slot availability and stuff like that. It's a real slippery slope and it gets complex really quick. Um, we have a pretty generic Next.js monorepo. Surprise, surprise, currently serverless. So I don't really understand how people on X go crazy all the time. I mean, sure, the bill is probably a bit higher than if you had like 5, 6 vertically scaled servers, but then we also don't pay anyone to manage them, right? Like we just like up and down scale as we grow. Hasn't really been a major like I don't look at my Vercel bill and be like, oh my god, we're in trouble. Sure, if it was a completely free product and we had no money, I guess, because then I guess you should really think about making more revenue, I guess. So yeah, fully serverless. We are, however, migrating part of the API of the external facing API on a Nest.js server, which is like not serverless. I don't know what the opposite of serverless is. Server full, I guess. Um, and so we are migrating a bit of the V2 API to a fixed server. And this is mostly because we have a lot of external facing requests nowadays, right? So they don't come from our monorepo, they don't come from our app, and that's been on our mind. Like, how can we make this the most stable without like any cold boots or without any, any of the tiny little issues you every now and then have with serverless, right? Like nothing's better. It's all, um, you're comparing
Yeah, it's just trade-offs.
yeah, there's all these trade-offs. And so, but I think for an external facing API, we're very happy with Nest.js. It's much better to build these comprehensive APIs than using Next.js TRPC. But I mean, the way we handle data is, I don't know, we just have code that, like, I don't know, it's really not that crazy. I don't think we have no Kubernetes setups with different microservices. It's all just one big monorepo, and it just does stuff. Like it's
I would love this answer. Like, imagine if this was a job interview and I asked you this question, like as an interviewer, and you're just like, I don't know, man. We have a monorepo that just does stuff. Um, But wait, I don't get it. So you're saying Cal.com, everything about Cal.com is just a big Next.js monorepo at this point in time, and you're
yeah,
working on an external API with Nest.
yeah,
We'll talk about that maybe,
yeah,
but it's Next.js
yeah.
with what API routes for each network level API level operation. How then? Surely you have to have some type of long running process to handle the synchronization with Google Calendar, right? Because they're sending you events and you need to persist them somewhere. So how can it be entirely serverless if you've got to have support for like long execution? Because serverless on Vercel has a 5 minute timeout at the most, right?
Right.
But sometimes your ingestion jobs take longer than that.
Yeah. I do know that the team is working on like some crazy caching stuff. I don't know the exact details. It's probably out there. It's not hidden
Yeah.
stuff. It's just I'm not too involved in that project. But um, I mean, you're totally right. Like, how do we like our get slots API endpoint is the most important one because that's the one that returns, am I free Monday or am I free Tuesday, right? So that is a probably the most important API in our repo, and that loading time has gone down from like 11 seconds down to like half a second or something
Wow.
over the years. We've had this big announcement where we compared like 3.0 versus 4.0, or maybe it was 2.0 versus 3.0 or something. Um, and that's been like some really, really cracked engineering work to, speed that up. Um, but I think the next update will go down to like milliseconds because then we will have the whole endpoint cached, and we use the webhooks from each calendar to like refresh the cache when there's an update. Um, and so basically, what this would mean is whether you have one calendar connected or 100, doesn't matter because the updates come from each calendar individually, not like, because in the past we've had this serverless function call that would just like in real time ping that calendar and say, is am I free this time?
Right.
And then you had this little spinner, and um, and that was not ideal. It was really,
Right.
really slow and sluggish, and felt more like a SPA app than a fast app. So
Yeah, so
um,
it was a pull model where the
yeah,
calendar would say,
yeah,
"Hey, all like if you have like n calendars connected, it would be like, okay, am I free? Am I?" It would do that call n times. Versus
exactly.
now it's more
Yeah.
push model.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's been a major drawback in the beginning because we built this thing initially with like there was not even a way to add multiple calendars. It was just like connect to Google Calendar, that's it. And then as we build out, this whole app store system, we thought about like, okay, how does this even scale? What if people have 10 calendars? Um, and then obviously, and then not only that, but like, what if you have a team with a round robin link of 10 people with 10 calendars? Now you have 100 calls. Like, is that really how we want to build this? Um, so yeah, that's been very interesting. But the whole details, I'm not too familiar with. But also not everything is serverless. I think there are a couple things that we just still have on some server somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably somewhere you're storing data, right?
Yeah,
You have to store the state of each event. There's probably some data stored there.
yeah.
Interesting.
I mean,
There's
we have a
also
Postgres database, right? So yeah.
is it on Supabase? That would be so funny if it was.
No, we I think when I really worked on this, Superbase was still in like a private, not private, but
Yeah.
like a hobby-ish version. So like I wasn't sure if I want to set the whole thing up on Supabase, but now it's
Yeah.
probably the most legit choice. Yeah. We've built the platform starter kit on Supabase, and it's really nice. So shout out to the whole team. They've been really, really building an amazing product.
Yeah, I've been hoping to get Kiwi Koppel sometime on the podcast.
Yeah.
It's just difficult with his time zone. Okay, there's also a feature that I think is very cool with Cal.com where you have your own. Cal.com has its own video support service, like a call platform, like Google Meets or
Yeah.
Riverside. Why did you all decide to build that? Was this responding to a GitHub issue or something? Because I feel like this is a lot of complexity that you sort of get for free with Google Meet or Zoom that you
Right.
could integrate with. So there's the question I'm asking at a high level is, as engineers, we're often faced with, do we build something or do we integrate with something? And integration is almost always cheaper. So the decision to build this video meeting platform seems like a lot. Where did that come from? Why was that decided?
Sure. Well, I mean, yes, we have Cal Video, but it's powered by daily.co, which is a like a video as a service kind of platform. And so we did not build all of the video uh, logic our own. Um, that would be, I agree, a pretty big undertaking. Would not be happy with that. Um, but we have a partnership with them. They've invested in our Series A back in the days. They've been a great sparing partner. The reason being is we have a lot of open source customers who don't want to use Google Meet or Zoom for all kinds of reasons, HIPAA and all that stuff, or they want to white label it themselves. They don't want to have Cal Video. Maybe they call it like Sacred Heart Video or whatever. And so pretty early on, we realized it would be really cool to have our own video client, just because I always think of like um, Zoom and Google Meet are a product without a lead funnel, right? Someone has to send you that link because like you don't just like, I mean, maybe you call someone from within FaceTime or so, but like in order to get a meeting, you need someone to send you the link, right? And as a scheduling platform, you are basically the gatekeeper of what links are being sent, right? And so what's interesting is we've made Cal Video the default option and the free option. You don't need Google Meet, you don't need Zoom, you don't need to connect any button. It increases the time to speed, time to value for our customers because they sign up, they connect only one calendar and they are ready to have meetings. They don't need to connect another service or configure another service. Um, Bear in mind, some people don't use Google, so they can't use Google Meet. You can only use Google Meet if you have a Google account. So maybe someone signs up with Outlook, and then do they need? How do you explain someone to also make a Zoom account, or you know, like someone who's a little bit older, like they don't want to
Right.
make another account and they don't know how to connect two apps together, right? So for me, my mental model was how can we make this as easy and like go get started
Yeah.
the fastest.
As frictionless as possible.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Uh,
Let's talk about your platform. I think this was a big brain move. The thing that was recently launched. By recently, I mean a few
yeah.
months ago. I don't know if that's recent, depending on how fast you ship. But the platform is cool because it, instead of Calendly being coupled UI plus API, what I understand now, based on this even Nest.js service you're talking about, is you're decoupling them. And so this would enable developers to sort of build their own UI. It doesn't matter, or
Yeah.
that connects to this API. And so we're going to see less cookie cutter cal.com scheduling pages, probably, right? And more custom ones. Huge brain move, in my opinion, because it's giving people more control while also still being sticky.
Yeah.
Cal.com. Can
Yeah.
we speak to the business rationale for that? Because to me, this is, again, big brain, because it still makes you sticky while making you not as recognizable.
Yeah, so platform is really not for individuals. It is for developers building platforms, um, hence the name. So a platform is for people who build a marketplace, maybe something like Fiverr or Upwork or a telehealth marketplace to find a dentist in your location. Um, we really want to empower people to build with Cal.com, not only fork it and self-hosted, but really just like get the raw like logic we've built as a service. So like all the time zone and slot calculations and uh, calendar APIs, all abstracted away into like a nice API, and and then empower them to eh, connect users with users. It's very different to I want bookings. Like I think what you were mentioning earlier with Calendly, that was the same problem that I had with my previous business. With Lean Hire, it was a marketplace to find remote workers and then hire them as a contractor and then convert them into full time. I was using Calendly myself, and I asked people during the onboarding, please make a Calendly account and copy the link and post this into my onboarding screen, right? The problem being is some people don't want to make a Calendly account, or they don't know how, or they copy the wrong link, or they change the username, but they don't update the link in my product. And so all these different issues that comes with a external facing SaaS. But the biggest issue was that like I was not controlling that account. So I could not do admin APIs. I could not read the data for good reasons. And I wanted to build a marketplace where my users would book other users, namely contractors hire company and the hiring companies. And so that's really all the way back why I actually started working on Cal.com. So platform is like the OG product that I wished I had shipped with a 2 year delay. But so yeah, it's really for platforms, and the reason being is these platforms are highly customized typically, right? You have not only the UI, but also maybe they want to add a different feature or add something or remove something. And so that's where I'd say the most custom work comes in. We don't think platform is for like individuals who want to have their own WordPress
Yeah.
blog with a nicer looking booking embed. I don't think that's the case. It's really just to build scheduling infrastructure into existing or new products.
Right. Products like the one you mentioned, Lean Hire. And I had no idea that you and I had literally the same. Yeah, the company I worked for was extremely similar. And wow, okay. It sounds like there's common ground for the basis of building something like Cal.com. It's usually
Sure.
platforms like this. You
Yeah.
also recently shipped Atoms with this. And I think this is very interesting because it talks about, or rather, it solves the need of um, components as a service, right?
Yeah.
Like I think like Stripe pioneered this with their suite of like credit card forms and so
Yeah.
on.
Stripe Active.
LiveBlocks is doing this. Yeah, let's talk about atoms. Let's maybe start the discussion with what are atoms, how do they work, and why? Yeah,
Yeah. So Atoms is a big part of platform. Platform to me is Atoms plus APIs, because really you want, it's pure React. There's no we made the choice to nail React first and then potentially branch out into other frameworks. But React, let's be honest, is just like 90% of the market, so that's okay for us. And so it is a set of React components that are really the React components we use in our own core app. So it's battle hardened. It's been tested and well developed by hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's not like an external set of things. We use them every day for our own product. Um, and what we've seen in the past is where before Atoms, when people wanted to build their own scheduling infrastructure, they would fork our repo, and then they would like kind of like, as you said, cookie cutter out the existing things and like have somewhat of a microservice and all these different like workarounds. Because yes, they wanted to customize things, but my mind was like, how can we build it in a way where they don't have to go all through like self-hosting and API, like getting API keys from Google and Zoom and all that stuff. Like it's a big job to self-host
it is.
any type of software. So for those people who just want a more customizable React component, we were like, we're underserving that market right now. And so we built both the APIs and the Cal Atoms to help platform customers get started quicker. Like same with Stripe Elements, really. It's Stripe Elements for time.
Right. I Stripe elements for time. Wow. I thought you were going to say Stripe elements for scheduling, but you get an even broader dimension. What I'm noticing here is you're decomposing your company and your product, right?
Yeah,
Maybe just the product, because like Cal.com started as this monolith that is a monorepo in Next.js. I'm sure there's a bunch of small API functions and so on, but ultimately it was one product. It is one product. It's got UI, it's got an API, and now you're splitting things up as a way of adding value to users, absolutely, but also making your product sticky and in more places
Yeah.
in the market. Is that true? And if yes, is that something you'd advise other product led growth companies to pursue?
Um, my line of thinking was always, how do pure API companies win customers, right? Because like if you're starting out entirely white label as an API company, winning one customer will not get you a second one. There's a couple companies out there, TimeKit, Nihilus, Acuity, that have a few APIs that do scheduling. Um, and it's always been surprising to me how much of a uphill battle the sales is, because technically, since you have literally zero virality, you may get a customer case study, great, and you could use that for the next sales call, but you still need to, like, for 10 deals you need to have 10 sales calls. Well, let's pretend every sales call closes. But for 100 you need 100 sales calls, so like it doesn't work. Like how do pure API companies not think about that? Because the same thing is also true for, let's say, OpenAI, which started out with ChatGPT as a consumer-facing product, and then they shipped the developer-focused APIs, and we're like, hey, by the way, if you want this experience in your app, sign up for developer.openai.com, right? So they have this virality of this crazy like magic ChatGPT product, and then they also sell the infrastructure. And if you look around in the market, we're the only ones doing both the consumer facing Cal.com monorepo, consumer facing slick polished UI, but also sell all of the learnings we've had baked into our infrastructure. And um, it's surprising to me, honestly, how some companies don't think about, like, how do I get this into the hands of more people? The reason why Calicom is also free is because we want people to experience the product, and then maybe they have the same idea as you, like, hey, I want to build a marketplace. Oh, there's Calicom platform. Let me sign up for that product, right? Because it's really, really hard to build, a 10 million, 100 million, half a billion business when it relies on you to keep closing every single customer by hand, right?
Yeah.
That's not where we wanted to be in the beginning.
I find it very interesting that you draw this distinction between customer facing and developer facing.
Yeah,
And you emphasize Cal.com is like mass market consumer facing product. And I as a developer often forget this, mainly also because I came to Cal.com from my struggle with trying to re-implement Calendly. And so for me, I've always looked at Cal.com as a developer because it's an open source tool, and I live in that world. But I often forget that it's mass market consumer facing. And so what you're saying is there's more value, or rather what I'm hearing is there's more value in that market than in the developer market. And I think maybe not just APIs, right? Even if someone's building, I think of I don't know, a library like X State for state management, you're going to have a much harder time selling this at all to a developer market. But if you build a tool, a UI around it that is facing mass market consumers, you're going to have a much easier time making sales. And then once you have that traction with the consumer market, then you can maybe extract out libraries and things for developers, kind of like you're doing.
yeah,
Um, does that resonate at all?
for sure. I mean, it uh, developers and consumers are not always, like, sure, you have consumers who are also developers, which is great for open source. But a lot of times, like, people say, like, why is Calicom open source? It doesn't strike me as like, or when they build their own open source project, and they say, like, it's not really, like, I'm not the audience of a developer. I think that's bullshit, because like every developer has a hobby or is also a non-developer besides their work, right? So let's pretend you're building the next
Hopefully.
Spotify, um, and you decide to build the next Spotify in open source, whatever that means. I don't care. But then you are like, okay, well, I mean, there is certainly developers who like music, right? So now you have your audience again, right? And so for us, yes, maybe only 1% of our audience is a developer and is interested in scheduling, but that's a big fucking audience if you address a big
Yeah.
fucking market, right? Um, and so I'd rather be in that market than in a pure developer market where every single user of my product is a developer. Um, because then
Yeah.
you don't have these mass market virality effects, really. I mean, unless
Yeah.
they have that baked in, but
Yeah.
yeah.
This is so cool. I mean, this is just the idea that all developers are consumers, but not all consumers are developers is so key. And I wonder if how Supabase feels about this. And I just keep thinking about Supabase because of the memes, but like they're a tool that's for developers only, right? There's no mass market
Yeah.
Supabase as far as I know. And so, yeah, that'll be an interesting discussion to have with Paul maybe. Okay, let's talk about AI. You've been doing some absolutely incredible things with AI. And I hope you got the domain peer.ai, by the way. If not, we should let this is me expressing my support on the podcast for you to get it. So there's Cal.ai, which is AI-enabled scheduling infrastructure. As far as I know, I've seen this expressed as an incredible demo that you did, where you make a phone call
Hmm.
to a voice agent that sounds very human, and you're like, "Hey, can I get a meeting scheduled for this day, this time?" And it takes you through this whole flow, and then does it. What in the world? How is that? I'm sure you're using like probably OpenAI's voice models or something, but I'd love you to speak to the genesis of this idea and then its implementation.
Yeah, so the I can actually demo it, I guess. So maybe I have
Are
a
you doing a call on the podcast to
that
a
would
yeah?
be
Whoa,
that would be
that
fun.
is so cool.
So the idea came actually from how do we came up with this? I mean, we had Cal AI as a different product initially, which most people don't know it because that product never really took off. It was a phone agent. It was not, sorry, it was an AI agent for emails. So you may have seen like Howie.ai, which is kind of like becoming more popular. And basically the TLDR is um, we initially thought it would be a good idea to have an email or chat based agent who can like interact with your calendar or like reschedule things or
Yeah,
all kinds of cute things. The problem though with these agent is that it was at a time earlier when it was just still not accurate enough, right? And so that was a big issue where um, we we just had so many issues with time zones and people scheduling, or it would take too long, or all kinds of these issues. Um, and so that's been a big struggle. And then we deprecated the product, and at the same time, these phone agents came out. We again, same with Cal.ai. We same with Cal Video. We haven't built everything ourselves. That would be pretty mad. So we're partnering up with another company who does all of the text to speech stuff, but we're very deeply integrated into their product as well. So not only we are using their product, but they are also selling our scheduling APIs to their customers, right? So it's kind of like this back and forth partnership, which is really cool. Um, and I don't remember. I think it was actually Deal who talked to me. I was meeting one of their managers for customer support, and they said like we need to call customers to remind them that they have like missing KYC documents. So
right.
they basically like asked me, and they asked me if I know like a good phone company or something. And for me, that was like such a we could try AI moment because it's a very generic phone call. It's like, hey, it's Peer. I wanted to remind you, you still need to upload your passport inside the deal dashboard, right? But not only notify them, but also let them know if you have any issues, feel free to schedule me next week or something. And then that agent also does the scheduling part, which is really cool. And that's been really cool to see play out nicely. So
Incredible. Are you prepared? Are you pulling up the demo?
yeah, I'm trying.
To
I have an issue getting the phone number on my phone right now because apparently the copy I can type it into. So
Interesting. Okay, so how yeah, I'd love to see how it works. While you do that, I'd like to tell you what I want it to be, which it may be already. I don't know what state it's in right now, but I would love it. So Arc, man, the Arc browser
hello,
here is like,
it works now.
oh, you're calling your agent?
Let's see it. Hello? Maybe I wrote the wrong number. Hello? That would be funny if I
Are
called the
you
wrong number.
you calling your mom? Is this just a check-in?
Hello, who's this?
I don't hear
Oh,
anything. Is it on
okay. You just started talking when I hung up. All right, let me call again. This was
some latency here?
Yeah, maybe this is some typical demo test. Okay. Hey, what's it? Who's there? Sorry.
I'm here to assist you with scheduling an appointment with our support team. Let me know when you'd like to meet.
Does it work tomorrow? Which time zone are you in? Are you calling from the US?
I'm here to assist you with scheduling an appointment with our support team. Let me know when you'd like to meet with one.
That's very bad. I remember this demo was like not scripted out well enough. Tomorrow at 4, does that work?
Let me check the availability. Just a moment.
Whoa, that's cool. But I guess the question is, whose 4 p.m. is it, right?
Just to confirm, you want to book the appointment for tomorrow at 4 p.m.
Yes.
Is that correct? Booking the appointment for tomorrow at 4 p.m. The appointment for tomorrow at 4 p.m. has been. Is there anything else I can assist you with?
No, that's it. Thanks. Have a good day.
I like that you told the agent to have a good day.
Latency, this is surprising to me. I've done this many times. Latency has increased. You've seen the demo earlier on Twitter. I need to look into that why that specific agent had so much delay. But
That's okay. We'll put a link to the better demo on X on in the show notes.
But what's interesting is that it actually uses our APIs, and so it checks whether you're available. If not available, it understands, of course, like any large language model, like what is tomorrow? What does it mean to say tomorrow at noon or stuff?
Yeah.
And so that's been really cool. And then you, of course, get like an email invite, all of that stuff.
Yeah, because just then you said 4 p.m., but it wasn't clear to me whose 4 p.m. this would be, right? Assuming, yeah. Incredible. You know, I started saying this earlier before we had the conversation with the agent, and this is something you posted about on social media as well, which I agree. The Arc browser and the browser company behind it are doing just absolutely incredible. I'd love to get Josh Miller on the podcast at some point to talk about it, but they have this new feature where you can ask Arc. Have you seen this? So you open the Arc search app on your phone, and you can literally, like, if you hold it up to your face, you end up calling the browser. What is this? So you like call it, and then you can ask it a question like, how many, slices of pizza should I eat? And it's like, it does a Gen AI thing and gives you an answer. I would love that, but with Cal.ai. So like I get a phone number, and it's not someone's scheduling phone number, but it's my assistant. And I'm like, I can call it and be like, well, summarize my calls that I have next week. And it will do that. And cancel this or move that. And it's like my personal assistant on a phone number or just at the app that I can access. Is that something that y'all have spent some time on? Please say yes.
You could do that with the Cal.ai agent. You can build the stories like it would only schedule though, because we made the mistake earlier to expose our email agent to all APIs that we have, like what's on my calendar, reschedule something, cancel something. And it was just like not the more tools you add, the more it has to think and the longer it takes, and it's really, really hard. So the phone agent really just does bookings. But you can use that for your own. I mean, I don't know how happy Arc is with their product. I do have to say I am somewhat disappointed of the hype cycle of AI. I think it's still rather whack. And as we use AI products more and more, we realize how much hallucinating and also what the cause of hallucinating is. It's one thing to. I always make the example when you have, let's say, a AI that draws a photo, right? How many times is the first painting good?
Yeah, never.
Never, right? And that's fine because it's a toy. It's like, oh, look at this funny little cute photo it made. But when you now apply the same ratio to mission critical software, and it would take 5 takes to get it right, that's not good, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure.
And so that's why I'm still a little bit more on the fence. I definitely don't think AI will kill us. I think it will take a long time to be somewhat superhuman. And look, many things are already way smarter than me, and I'm still fine. So, but that's a whole.
Yeah, AI needs guardrails. I think that's the thing. Like, you can't afford, especially if you're doing something like scheduling a calendar event, you can't afford to get a name wrong. Or yeah, for sure. And AI in its current state will definitely do that. Hey, can you change the voice, by the way, with Cal.ai? That person sounded like way too royal.
Yeah.
Could you like copy the voice of the person whose calendar it is?
No, I don't think so.
Ah,
I
not
mean,
yet.
that would require like the whole voice cloning. I don't think that's anywhere on the roadmap.
Good. Riverside, so what we use to record podcasts, they have a new feature where I record like a sentence in my own voice, and
Hmm.
then they can do text to speech. I can make myself say anything. It's a new Gen AI feature that they're creating, and a lot of people are like creating ways for creators to clone their voices, which I think is it opens up a can of worms because then you can, in theory, clone someone else's voice and go
Sure,
down the deep fake path. So
sure.
there's a lot of ethical considerations here that I think we have to account for.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
Um,
well, I'm not saying AI is not dangerous. Like you can probably trick my mom into pretending I was kidnapped. That's quite easy, right? So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Just it just needs more thought as we get. Okay, Pierre, I think it's time to start wrapping up. But I do want to ask you like one question that I've asked literally every founder and CEO on this season of the podcast. And it's so great that so many folks come on and share their insights. You've been a founder and the CEO of Cal.com for a few years now, right?
I'm
You've seen the company.
chairman, so I'm not CEO, but yeah.
The chairman, is someone else the CEO? Do you
Yeah,
have
I mean,
CEOs? Oh,
we never really put like a label onto those things, but like I barely do any CEO work. Um, I'm really just product and sales, and then
okay.
organizing the board as a chairman, organizing the board. Bailey, my co-founder, has been. I'd say like unnamed co-CEOs for like the longest time, and then at some point I was like, I don't actually want to do any of that stuff. So
Yeah. Nice. Okay. So let's stick with founder. You've been the founder, and there's so many founders who came on and said they answered this question in their own way. So I'm curious about your answer. The context here is sometime earlier this year or late last year, I was sitting with some founder friends, right, and they were all sort of like expressing how complicated and difficult it is navigating the path of being the technical founder, especially in a company that relies on both product led growth and founder led growth. And so a lot of it was just lamentations around like, they don't prepare you for this. And we were contrasting this as engineers, as technical founders, contrasting this with standards documents, living standards like HTML and CSS and JavaScript that, like HTML spec 25 megabyte document says the details element works like this. IMG has alt and source attributes. And these living standards help. And we sort of toyed with the idea, what if there was such a document, but for the technical founder? A living standard, a specification sheet, right? You can expect these things, fundraising works this way, bootstrap here, VC there, etc. A number of founders have come on and contributed to the idea of this. If you had something to add to such a document, what would you add?
I mean, there is a lot of I always make the distinction between creative risk and operational risk. And I don't think anyone can help you with creative risk because that requires, lots of experimentation, domain knowledge, deep insights, expertise. Like no VC will ever tell you any good creative solutions. They just don't. Anything else that's operational risk is like out there, like YC startup school and all that stuff. So if you can just like summarize that, I think they already cover most of it. Um, like don't spend all your money in the first year. It's a great advice. Um, this is your last round of funding. Is a great advice. So these things I say like these evergreens. They're always somewhat true. I mean, there are always exceptions to the rule, right? But I don't think I have like anything specific. Like maybe something that
From
uh,
your experience of through the past 3 years, going from
or like
nothing to
for
a 3
technical
million,
people or just founders in general.
whatever you want. This
Like
is
just
your
start,
contribution.
just just have a paywall early and just like filter out. Maybe even not have a free product in the beginning. Just like have a paid only product. Because like then
Wow.
you only accept people into your literally you only get paid records in your database, and these people will be much better to work with. Their feature requests will be of much higher quality. There will be way less pain in the ass. There's definitely a correlation between how much a person pays and how little how not rude they are.
Yeah.
So I'd say let's just launch with a paid product, even if the product is ass. The way we built Calenzo back in the days was we were paid only and shit, and then that people signed up for it and subscribed, and we actually made a decent amount of revenue early on because people were just trying it out, and then as the company got better, we then launched a free tier the moment we were like, okay, now our support team can handle the support, right? And the opposite is way harder. If you start free, you always have this thought back in your mind, oh, one day I'm going to launch a pro feature that people will convert to and sign up for. That day will never happen because you're so busy making all the free users happy. And so I would
Right.
just start with a new product. I would start paid only and then eventually think about a free plan.
This is so cool. This actually ties perfectly into what Brian Douglas, the founder and CEO of OpenSauce, says,
Mm.
because they're optimizing for. So the entire company is built on open source, right? And they're optimizing for growth, but they're starting at enterprise. And so they're like, what problems do you have? How can we solve it for huge amounts of money? And then once we build this thing that you want, we can factor out parts to give away for free to the everyday developer. So the bottoms up strategy. I think that's in line. How though does this sounds in some ways anti open source? Make people pay from day one. How do you reconcile that with the core value of no, but it has to be open source as well?
No, I mean, the open source, it's still free. You can still self-host it. But like, if you want to be on my, like, also think about like all these issues that people have with serverless. Like, if you have a free product that's being used by 100,000 people and you're not making any money and your Vercel bill topples up, like you probably made a mistake of not charging them. It's easy as that, you know?
It's pursuing a net zero instead of a net negative from day one, right? That would be your take. Awesome. That's so
And
great.
also, when you have the thing is when you have a open source, let's say you have a commercial open source business and you don't have a free plan on your pricing page, you still have a free plan in the GitHub because people can just self-host it. And then in the early days, you incentivize people to clone, fork, and set it up themselves so they maybe find issues about the code base much rather. So in the early days, you incentivize people to, if you want free self-host, and then in the later days, as your adoption, as the type of person changes, my mom's not going to self-host, but I want her to give her a
Yeah.
free plan, then you launch these free plans.
This is directly the Hasura business model. Hasura being a GraphQL API on Postgres. They started exactly like this. It was Docker Compose. You hosted yourself. Obviously, you have to know Docker and how to self-host, but you do it, and then you find issues, and they grew this crazy community. And now they're a unicorn. They're valued at over $1 billion because of it. So awesome. That's such a great takeaway. We talked, Pierre, about how AI is sort of weak right now, and it's not. It has the potential to be disruptive to many industries, even the scheduling infrastructure industry, but it's not yet. Given that, do you see any trends or emerging technologies that are potentially disruptive in the scheduling space?
I mean, there is an idea about like what happens to human jobs. Like, will I have a call with my tax accountant, or is that job just a API call? So I think that somewhat is a risk. But like to be honest, I think people really just like talking to each other. Like, let's pretend, do people want to listen to a deep fake podcast between me and you, right? Is that better
You
than
mean this isn't?
talking?
You mean this isn't a deepfake podcast between me and you?
Right, but like the moment that happens, you probably don't need a scheduling component unless you want to have a human talk to a robot, which again could be a potential outcome of the future. Who knows if that's a desired outcome or a eventuality outcome? But so I guess as long as humans talk to humans, I think we'll be fine. The question is just like how is the connection being made, and I I still think for like accessibility, websites are not going anywhere. And that also means content on a website doesn't go anywhere, which means React doesn't go anywhere unless someone, I don't think React's going anywhere. People say that for the past 10 years, it's not going to happen. And so as
Yeah.
long as you have a React booking component, it's not going to go anywhere. Like, quote me on that. But I still think we will have a interactive web UI in the next 10 years.
Yeah, I hope so. It's interesting that you say React's not going anywhere. I have a theory about this. It's when something dies and is buried in the earth, right? Like it decomposes slowly and then it becomes a fossil, but post fossilization it gets mineralized. It literally just becomes rock.
Mm.
And I think that's how technology works on the web, particularly. Like in the beginning everything's like soft, like a baby, and then hardens over time, becomes an adult, dies, becomes a skeleton, and then becomes a rock. And you see that, for example, HTML was new at some point, but over time, I mean, now it's basically bedrock, literally bedrock. CSS, JavaScript, jQuery was like this. It was soft at a time, but then you got document.query selector, and now it still runs most websites on the internet. It's
Mm.
sort of bedrock, and I think React is going that way. It's useful, but it's sort of buried in a good way and foundational now, so that someone can build on top, right? Do you agree?
Well, I mean, Next.js is built on top of React, right?
There you go. Yeah, and I wonder if we'll see a day where Next.js becomes also this bedrock. Probably a discussion with Guillermo. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit, and this is our last segment. Let's talk about the future of Cal.com. What experimental features or architectural changes are you exploring? I mean, Cal.ai we looked at. Anything else in the burner?
We are interested in all kinds of industries, so there's not like one single industry. I mean, healthcare has been great for us, so doubling down on that. I think the other larger industry is also just like generic sales calls and stuff like that. So, doing advanced like routing, who should this call be routed to, and it's like a senior salesperson, a junior salesperson, all that kind of stuff, like all the routing logic. We have something called routing forms, but I'd love to ship like a V2 of that product. So I think that's another interesting industry for us. Um,
I saw somebody praise Cal.com really a lot for this feature that I haven't seen in the wild, but I want to. They went on customer support. I think it was Deal, right? And there was a scheduling page, but underneath it was actually just call us now.
yeah,
That's cool. Is that new? How does that work?
yeah, that's called instant meetings. And it's basically you visit it when enabled, you visit someone's booking page, and if that person right now is available, or that team, it's typically team events, right? So you have like a round robin of 20 people or something, and it skips a lot of steps because like you don't select a date, and it just says like, hey, someone's available, click here to join the call. And so basically what happens is they click the call, join calling, and they are like in this little waiting room, which by the way, I added the Flappy Birds game, so you can like play Flappy Birds while you wait.
Awesome.
It's hilarious. And so while they wait, the phone rings, not the phone, but like the virtual phone rings at this team, and the first person who picks this one up. So it's not clearly round robin, but it's really just about time. The first person who clicks that link expires the link for everyone else, and then they collectively join in this video call, right?
That is so cool. That's such a great feature. I can imagine it being so optimizing, almost revolutionary for customer support, because that's what I want. Instead, like if I go on Vodafone and I ask for customer support, usually I get some stupid robot that
Yeah,
asks me questions and then doesn't understand what I'm saying and then has me say like a number like
yeah.
very clearly. Dude, like wow, this is absolutely game changing.
And also, not every problem from a consumer needs immediate attention. Like me, let's say I have a low-hanging, low-priority issue. Maybe I just want to book a time in the next couple days. But if it's really urgent, I have the option to like, oh wow, I can click here and join the call. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You're part of two movements as far as I know. OSS accelerationism and Europe accelerationism. As a German,
Yeah.
I assume you're German. What's that like running a company, like a company in Europe and Germany? Europe has this reputation for being slow and backward, and in the like, I think Levels.io posted something where the biggest the bigger, the higher valued European companies they were founded like 150 years ago or something, and the US is constantly poking shots at us for being slow movers and
Right.
regulators. What's it like running Cal.com as a European? I'm assuming in Europe.
I spent a lot of time in the US. Also in the past, like I built most of my career in the US. Did Y Combinator in the US. I got the O1 visa, so it's rather more easy to come and go. Just blessing in disguise. I I wouldn't consider this like it's a US company. My co-founder lives in New York. I don't
Right.
check in with the EU. I'm not in Berlin. I don't care about the ecosystem. I'm in many countries, in fact. I don't really join that conversation as much. I've had German companies before. Um, Sadly, uh, it's
So then you agree that you have to be in the US to be successful as a startup founder,
it
or
depends.
most of the time.
If you want to. Here's the thing, right? Like, if you plan to build a large company that could go public, you probably want to go public at the best public market, right? Like, you don't want to go public in
Right.
like Frankfurt. How many Google? How many
Yeah.
IPOs in Germany? All right, cool.
Yeah.
Let's check this out. We've had 3 IPOs in the last 2 years.
Oh my
Amazing,
gosh.
right? So, like, what does that say about the ecosystem? Not much. And
Yeah.
so I think if you plan to build a large corporation, plus, you can't even take a GmbH public, you need to reincorporate and all these freaking bullshit. Like, um, I don't think it's worth. I don't think it's worth trying if everything is in your way. Like
Yeah.
startups are already really really hard. Like we talked about the creative risk and the operational risk. So if I can
Yeah.
pick between creative risk and operational risk, I try to minimize my operational risk to down to zero, right? And taking an American company public is a proven path. Taking
Yeah.
a German company public, I don't even know who to call them,
Yeah.
right? So,
Um. Yeah.
but needless to
My
say, again, we have no German employees. I'm not even working here, and so we do all my business in the US. So
my partner is German, and like she's proper German, and even she says she's like, dude, I just have a phobia of German bureaucracy, which is kind of unfortunate, man. I wish that changes. I whatever it takes, I'm happy to like commit and work to make it more like the US. Okay, thanks for sharing that. Pierre, a lot of the founders said that they're building technically very complex products. I'm talking about things like Terzo, right? SQLite at the edge. What? A lot of these founders say that while the products, from an engineering perspective, are very, very complex, they're not. That is not the hardest part, which is hard for me to hear. They say the hardest thing instead is positioning and marketing. Has that been your experience with Cal.com? Building scheduling infrastructure is super hard, but has the marketing and positioning side also been equally as hard or harder?
I mean, I'd say most of adoption comes from people sharing their links and then signing up for them, right? So I think if your product is the website, like if the domain is the product, and I don't think marketing is as important.
Yeah,
Um, I'm actually not really experts in developer tools, as funny as it sounds. Like I don't do the raw, I don't even invest in raw developer tools because like um sure we've seen MongoDB and GitLab potentially, but I'm quite I like applications, right? And
yeah.
so if something's pure tech, I find it hard to visualize what the future can be like, right?
Right, and to visualize its value. Like, sure,
Yeah,
this is going to make developers happy, but like,
yeah,
what about the world?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, my last question, Pierre. This is it. This is the last question, and it's maybe a big one. But I'm curious if you would what you'd answer to this. If you could say, Cal.com didn't exist, you you had to rebuild it today or build it from scratch today, what would you do differently knowing what you know now, compared to when you started?
Oh dear. Um, I don't know. We've been doing pretty well.
So
Uh,
nothing. That's the ideal, right? I would do nothing differently because it just worked the first time.
yeah, I don't really have a lot of regrets right now.
This is so good. That's a reasonable answer, man. That's so cool.
No regrets.
Fantastic. Well, listen, we've covered so much, and I, I'd be remiss if I didn't stop here and just thank you so much. I mean, you came on, and we did reschedule a few times, but I'm happy we made it work. We covered open source, running a company on open source, but also running an open company, man, with the payment and the salaries and the users. Cal.com is definitely a company with no secrets and a lot of value to add. So, on behalf of myself and all of the listeners, thank you so much for coming on and sharing these things with us.
Thank you, Tias. It was fun.
Thank you for joining my discussion with Pierre Richelsen. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I hope you feel motivated and inspired to run things fairly and openly with nothing to hide. I hope also you consider Cal.com for your scheduling needs. They're not sponsors or anything. I just really like the tool. In fact, most conversations with the guests on this podcast are scheduled with Cal.com. If you're learning from and or enjoying this content, then a great way to support it is to leave a review on YouTube or Spotify or Apple, up to 5 stars. If you're watching on YouTube, then leave a comment and let me know. And also feel free to share it on social media. That actually is a great way to support the podcast. If you do none of it, of course, it doesn't matter because I'm doing this for you and everyone else and also for me. So, hey, thanks so much for sticking around, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you so much for being a part of the podcast, and thank you for your interest in engineering.